Washington, D.C. March 1972. Let me take you there. Because Washington in March is a specific kind of cold. Not the honest, straightforward cold of New York or Chicago. Something more complicated. A cold that comes off the Potomac and sits in the marble corridors and the wide government avenues and makes everything feel more serious than it already is. And Washington, in March 1972, is already serious. Already carrying a weight that the city feels in its bones. Because this is 1972. Vietnam is still happening. The protests are still happening. Nixon is in the White House, and the relationship between America and the Soviet Union is what it has been for 25 years, a Cold War that is sometimes cold and sometimes not cold at all, a permanent state of tension that has shaped every decision every government on earth has made since 1947, and into this city, into this specific, charged political moment. The Soviet Union has sent a man, not a diplomat, not a politician, not an intelligence officer or not officially, a fighter, a champion, the undefeated Sambo champion of the Soviet Union, sent to Washington, D.C., on what has been officially described as a cultural exchange program, a demonstration of Soviet athletic excellence, a goodwill tour. Goodwill tour in 1972 between America and the Soviet Union. See, both countries understand what this actually is. Everyone in every room where it's being discussed understands what this actually is. It is a demonstration of Soviet physical and martial superiority dressed in the language of cultural exchange. It is a propaganda operation, wearing athletic clothing. It is the Cold War doing what the Cold War does, finding new arenas to fight in, new ways to establish dominance, new stages to perform, the argument that our system produces better results than yours, and the argument they've sent to make it. His name is Viktor Sokolov, and Viktor Sokolov is something. Let me tell you about Sambo, because most Americans in 1972 do not know what Sambo is. They know boxing, they know wrestling, they know judo. They do not know Sambo. Sambo is a Soviet martial art, developed in the 1920s by the Red Army. The name is an acronym, Samozashchita bez oruzia, self-defense without weapons. It was built specifically to be effective, not traditional, not philosophical, not concerned with history or ceremony or the preservation of ancient forms. Effective. The Soviet military needed a fighting system that worked, that produced results in real situations against real opponents. So they took the best elements from judo, from wrestling, from boxing, from Georgian folk wrestling, from dozens of other styles, and they combined them. They tested them. They kept what worked and discarded what didn't. They refined the result over decades of use by people whose job was to fight and who needed the fighting to work. The result is Sambo, a system with no wasted motion, no decorative technique, no kata, no ritual, no performance, just what works, applied with maximum efficiency against a resisting opponent who is also trying to hurt you. And Viktor Sokolov has been training in this system since he was 9 years old. He is now 31, 22 years, 6'1", 215 pounds. Built like a Soviet machine, which is to say, built for function. Not the aesthetic muscle of a bodybuilder, the specific, dense, purposeful muscle of a man who has been physically tested every day for 2 decades and whose body has responded by becoming exactly what the testing required. His record in Soviet Sambo competition, 94 fights, 94 victories. He has been the Soviet national champion for 6 consecutive years. He has won the World Sambo Championships 3 times. 3 times. He has not lost a match in 8 years. 8 years. He arrived in Washington 3 days ago. He has already been to the State Department, already been to a reception at the Soviet embassy. already done one public demonstration at Georgetown University that was attended by 400 people, and that the Washington Post covered with a photograph and 400 words on the front page of the sports section. The photograph showed Viktor Sokolov holding a 220-pound American judo champion completely off the ground with one arm. The headline read, "Soviet champion demonstrates why America should be worried." Tonight's demonstration is at a private athletic club in Georgetown. Not a government venue, not a university, a private club. The kind of place that has been in the same building for 60 years and has a membership that includes senators, generals, ambassadors, and the kind of old Washington money that doesn't need to announce itself because it has never needed to. The room they're using is a gymnasium. A good one. Wood floors, high ceilings, proper lighting, a mat in the center, regulation judo mat, blue, the closest available to a Sambo competition surface. Around the mat, chairs in a U shape, maybe 80 people, all of them someone. All of them in the room because they have clearance to be in the room, or because they are the kind of person that rooms like this include as a matter of course. Defense attachés from 4 embassies, 2 senators and their staff, a CIA officer in civilian clothes who is not officially there, 3 martial arts instructors from military training programs who have been told to attend and observe and report, a retired general, a Washington Post journalist who has been given exclusive access in exchange for agreeing to certain conditions about what can and cannot be printed. And in the third row of chairs on the right side of the mat, a small man in a dark jacket. He came with the film production group. There's a film project, a legitimate one, actually being developed that involves a martial arts consultant, and the martial arts consultant was added to the guest list 3 days ago through a connection that connected to a connection that resulted in his name being on a list that got him into this room. He is sitting in the third row. He has been sitting there for 20 minutes before Viktor Sokolov enters the room. He is watching the mat, not the people, not the senators or the attachés or the man who is not officially there. The mat. He is looking at the mat the way you look at a problem you are already solving. Viktor Sokolov enters the room at exactly 7 p.m. He is punctual in the way that Soviet athletes are punctual, which is to say, precisely, without apology, as a statement of discipline. He is wearing a blue Sambo jacket and matching shorts. The Soviet crest on the left breast. His hair is short, dark, going gray at the temples in a way that makes him look more serious rather than older. He carries himself the way men carry themselves who have never had a reason to doubt what they are. He is accompanied by a translator, young man, nervous, suit, and a Soviet sports official whose specific role nobody in the room is quite sure of. The translator speaks first. Standard diplomatic preamble. Cultural exchange. Friendship between nations. The importance of athletic achievement as a bridge between peoples. The usual, Viktor Sokolov does not speak during this. He stands, hands at his sides, looking at the mat. When the translator finishes, Viktor speaks in Russian. The translator renders it into English. Viktor Sokolov says, "I am here to demonstrate Soviet Sambo. I am not here to perform. I am here to show what this system is and what it produces. I will require a volunteer, several volunteers, preferably. I want to show this against real resistance, not staged cooperation." He looks around the room. "I am told there are martial artists here," he says through the translator. "Military combatives, instructors, judo practitioners. I would welcome them." He looks at the mat. "Shall we begin?" The first volunteer is a military combatives instructor, Army, 190 pounds, 12 years of combatives training, a no-nonsense man who has been sent here by someone who wants a real assessment of what this Soviet system can do. The match lasts 47 seconds. Viktor Sokolov takes him down with a hip throw, transitions to a leg lock on the ground, and the instructor taps before anything breaks. 47 seconds. Clean, efficient, without drama. Victor stands up, helps the instructor to his feet, nods respectfully. No celebration, no performance. He just did the thing. With maximum efficiency and zero waste. The room is quiet. The second volunteer is a judo black belt, third Dan, one of the military program instructors. He is more cautious than the first. He knows what he's facing now, or thinks he does. He tries to control the grip, to dictate the terms of engagement, to use his judo to stay out of the specific ranges where Sambo is most dangerous. Viktor Sokolov wins in 2 minutes and 14 seconds. Different technique, same efficiency, same absence of drama. The judo man taps from a shoulder lock that arrived from an angle his judo training had not prepared him for. Viktor helps him up, nods. The room is very quiet now. The Washington Post journalist is writing very fast. The CIA officer, who is not officially there, is looking at Viktor Sokolov with the expression of someone doing a professional assessment and not liking the results. Viktor speaks again. The translator renders. He asks if there are any other volunteers. He says he is particularly interested in someone from a striking-based system. Boxing, karate, any system based primarily on standing, striking, rather than grappling. He looks around the room. Nobody moves. The senators look at their hands. The attachés look at the mat. The retired general looks at the ceiling. Nobody moves. And then, from the third row on the right side, a hand goes up. Everyone turns. The small man in the dark jacket, third row, right side. He is sitting with one hand raised, not urgently, not performing. Just his hand is up, like a student answering a question in a classroom. Viktor Sokolov looks at him. The translator looks at him. The Soviet sports official looks at him and then looks at the translator and says something in Russian. Viktor says something back. The translator renders it. He asks, "What is your experience?" The small man says, "Martial arts. My own system." Viktor considers this. Looks at him, reading him the way a professional fighter reads anyone who steps into his proximity. Assessing, he sees a small Asian man, 5'7", maybe 140 pounds, dark jacket, dark trousers, street clothes, no visible indication of physical development that would register as a threat, no rank patches, no uniform, no credentials visible. Viktor speaks. The translator. He says, "Your system, what is it based on?" The small man says, "Whatever works." Viktor is quiet for a moment. He looks at the translator. The translator shrugs slightly. Viktor looks back at the small man. He says, through the translator, "Come forward." Now, the room reacts. Not loudly. This is Washington. These are Washington people. They don't react loudly. But the quality of attention in the room changes. You can feel it. The senators put down their drinks. The journalist stops writing and looks up. The CIA officer, who is not officially there, leans forward. Because this is strange. Two people have already tried Viktor Sokolov tonight. Trained military combatives instructor, judo black belt, 47 seconds and 2 minutes 14 seconds. And now a small Asian man in street clothes who practices something called whatever works has raised his hand. The small man stands. He removes his jacket, folds it, places it on the chair beside him. Underneath, dark fitted shirt. And for the first time, the room gets a sense of him physically. What was hidden under the jacket, the lean, functional muscle of someone who has trained seriously for a long time. Not large, not imposing, but dense, specific. The body of someone who has done something very particular with it for a very long time. The CIA officer, who is not officially there, makes a small note. The small man walks to the mat. He steps onto it, stands across from Viktor Sokolov. The size difference is significant. Viktor has 4 inches and 75 pounds on him. Viktor's reach is longer. Viktor's grip strength is well. Victor's grip strength is what you develop after 22 years of Sambo, which means it is exceptional. Victor looks at him. What is your name? The translator asks. Bruce Lee, the small man says. Victor nods. The name means nothing to him. He files it and continues. The Soviet sports official speaks to the translator. The translator turns to the room and announces, "This will be a full demonstration. Mr. Sokolov will use Sambo technique against this volunteer. Light contact for striking. Full technique for grappling. Both participants understand the terms." The small man nods. Victor nods. They bow to each other. Formal. Correct. And then Victor Sokolov moves. Victor's strategy is immediately clear to anyone in the room who can read it. And the three military instructors, the judo black belt, the CIA officer, they can read it. Victor is going to close distance and grab. That's Sambo. That's what Sambo does. It closes distance, it grabs, and once it grabs, the physics are established and the physics favor Victor Sokolov every time. He moves forward. Low, slightly crouched, hands reaching for the grip. The small man moves. Not back, forward, inside Victor's reach. Victor's hands close on empty air. Victor resets. The room murmurs just slightly, just the ghost of a murmur. Victor tries again, fakes the grip attempt, switches to a double leg takedown driving in low, going for both legs. The most reliable takedown in grappling because it bypasses the arms entirely and attacks the foundation. The small man sprawls. Not textbook judo sprawl, something faster. Something that also includes his hands finding Victor's head and applying downward direction, breaking Victor's posture. Victor disengage. Stands. Looks at the small man. This is new information. Victor has done that double leg takedown on 94 opponents. In competition and in training. He has never had it countered that way. The sprawl he recognizes. That's judo. That's wrestling. He knows the counter to the sprawl. But the hand on the head, the downward pressure on the posture, that's something different. That's not in the system he was trained to expect. He files it. Tries something different. He moves to close distance more slowly this time. Controlling the approach. Testing the small man's response to slower pressure as opposed to explosive attack. The small man doesn't retreat. He moves laterally. Circular. Keeping distance without creating it. Moving around Victor's pressure rather than away from it. Victor turns to follow. And here, this is the thing that the judo black belt and the military instructors notice simultaneously. Victor is turning to follow the circular movement. And turning means his weight is shifting, transitioning from one foot to the other, and transitioning weight is momentary, brief, but it's there. The small man sees it. His right hand comes out. Light contact on Victor's shoulder at the exact moment the weight is transitioning. Not pushing, suggesting direction. 2 pounds of force, applied at the precise moment when Victor's own momentum is between feet. Victor's step lands differently than he intended. Victor feels it. He stops, stands, looks at the small man. Now Victor Sokolov has been in this sport for 22 years. He has been the Soviet national champion for 6 years. He has been the world champion 3 times. He has felt things in training and competition that most people cannot imagine feeling. He has a library of physical experience that is encyclopedic. He has never felt that specific thing. That reading of the transition moment. That light redirection at exactly the right instant. He speaks in Russian. The translator hesitates, then renders it. He says, "Do that again." The room is completely still. The Washington Post journalist has stopped writing. The senators are not looking at their hands anymore. The CIA officer is not making notes. Everyone is watching the mat. The small man looks at Victor. He does it again. Not a combat move. A demonstration. Slower. So Victor can feel the specific thing that happened. The reading of the weight transition. The contact at the moment of vulnerability. The light direction applied to momentum that is already committed elsewhere. Victor feels it. He nods slowly. Speaks in Russian. The translator. He says, "This is a principle, not a technique. Where did you learn this?" The small man looks at him. "I developed it," he says. "It comes from Wing Chun and from observation." Victor speaks. Translator. He says, "Observation of what?" The small man says, "Of how force works, where it's strong, where it isn't." Victor is quiet for a moment. The translator and the Soviet sports official exchange a glance. Victor speaks again. Longer this time. The translator renders. He says, "In Sambo we are taught that force meets force and the greater force wins. That superior conditioning, superior technique, superior strength, these are the variables." He pauses. He says he has spent 22 years developing those variables. He looks at the small man. He says, "You are suggesting there is another variable." The small man says, "I'm not suggesting it. I just showed it to you." The room is very quiet. Viktor Sokolov, 94 fights, 94 victories, 8 years undefeated, 3 world championships, looks at the small man on the mat, and then he does something that nobody in this room expected, that nobody who knows Viktor Sokolov would have expected, that the Soviet sports official, watching from his chair, will later describe in a private report as unprecedented. He bows. Not the formal bow of 2 fighters before a match. Something more. Something that is not in the Sambo curriculum or the Soviet athletic protocol or the script for this evening's demonstration. A student's bow. He speaks. The translator, sounding slightly uncertain, he says, "Will you show me more of this principle?" They spend 90 minutes on that mat, not competing, not demonstrating for the room, something else entirely. Victor asks questions through the translator, specific, technical, precise questions that reveal 22 years of accumulated knowledge, looking for something it has been missing. The small man answers, shows, demonstrates slowly, then at speed, then explains the principle underneath the technique. Victor asks about the transition moment, the vulnerability in the weight shift. The small man explains, every movement has a moment of commitment. When you are between positions, you are in neither one. That moment is where the physics changes. Victor asks about the circular movement. Why does the small man not retreat in a straight line? The small man explains, straight line retreat is what the attack is designed for. Every attack is aimed at where you will be if you move predictably. Circular movement changes the geometry. The attack arrives where you were, not where you are. Victor asks about the light contact, the 2 pounds of force that redirected his step. The small man explains, force against force is your world. You are right that superior force wins there. But force has direction. Direction can be changed with very little energy if you find the right moment and the right angle. He pauses. You don't move 215 pounds. You move the direction of 215 pounds that is already moving. Victor sits with this. He speaks in Russian, not for the translator, just thinking out loud. The translator doesn't render it. The Soviet sports official leans forward and says something back, also in Russian. Victor looks at the small man. The translator speaks. He says, in Soviet sport, in Soviet military training, we are taught that the body is the instrument. That superior conditioning of the body produces superior results. He pauses. He says, you are describing the mind as the primary instrument. The small man looks at him. The body does what the mind sees, he says. If the mind can see the moment, the body only needs to be present for it. He pauses. Your body is exceptional. Your conditioning is exceptional. Your strength and technique exceptional. He meets Victor's eyes. But you were looking for my hands. You were not looking for my mind. Victor is very still. The Soviet sports official is writing something. The CIA officer who is not officially there has filled an entire page. At 9:30 p.m. they finish. Victor stands. The small man stands. They bow to each other, the full formal bow this time, from Victor, deeper than the one before the match. Victor speaks. The translator. He says, I came to America to demonstrate Soviet Sambo, to show what this system produces. He looks at the small man. He says he did not expect to find a question here that he does not know how to answer. He pauses. He says, What is your system called? Jeet kune do, the small man says. Victor repeats it carefully. In Russian, something like Jeet kundu. He nods. He will remember that name, he says through the translator. The small man nods. Victor extends his hand. American handshake. He has learned this in the past 3 days. The small man takes it. They shake. Long. Real. Victor says one more thing. The translator. He says, 94 fights. Undefeated. He looks at the small man. Tonight was 95. He says it without shame, without qualification. Directly. The small man looks at him. You didn't lose, he says. You found something. Victor considers this, nods once, and releases the handshake. The room takes a moment to come back to itself after Viktor Sokolov walks to the side of the mat, and the evening officially concludes. The Washington Post journalist has 16 pages of notes and knows he can use approximately 2 paragraphs of them due to the conditions he agreed to. He will spend 3 days trying to figure out how to write around the conditions and eventually produce an article about the Soviet cultural exchange program that mentions a martial arts demonstration at a private club and describes it as impressive. The CIA officer who is not officially there will produce a report that is still classified. The relevant portion, 4 paragraphs about an unnamed martial arts practitioner who appeared to neutralize a Soviet Sambo champion's primary attacking strategies using principles the analyst was unable to categorize within existing Western martial arts frameworks, will be read by 3 people and filed in a drawer. The Soviet sports officials' report, which reaches Moscow 6 days later, will note that Viktor Sokolov's Washington demonstration was largely successful, but that an unexpected participant demonstrated techniques that warrant further study. The report will recommend that someone be assigned to research a system called Jeet Kundo. Nobody is. The small man leaves the athletic club at 9:47 p.m. He walks out into the March Washington cold. The Potomac smell. Copped, karma, the marble and concrete of a city that takes itself very seriously. He puts his jacket back on. Dan Inosanto is waiting outside. He was not in the room. He has been standing outside in the cold for 2.5 hours. How was it? Dan says. The small man looks at the building he just came out of. The Soviet system is good, he says. Really good. He pauses. He's been doing it for 22 years and he's still learning. Dan looks at him. And the demonstration, Dan says. How did it go? The small man starts walking. He found the question, he says. Dan falls into step beside him. What question? The small man puts his hands in his jacket pockets. Whether force is the only variable, he says. They walk in silence for a moment. The March cold. The wide Washington avenues. Dan says. And? The small man looks straight ahead. It never is, he says. Viktor Sokolov returns to the Soviet Union 4 days later. He wins his 7th consecutive national Sambo championship 6 months after that. In his training after Washington, his coaches notice this. His sparring partners notice this. Something changes. Not in his technique, which remains exceptional. Not in his conditioning, which remains extraordinary. In how he watches his opponents. He starts watching differently. Not the hands, not the feet. Something else. Something in between. His coaches ask him about it. He tells them he is looking for the transition moments. They don't know what that means. Victor doesn't fully explain. Some things, he decides, you have to feel for yourself. He tells the story once, privately, to a student who has been training with him for 10 years and who Victor trusts completely. The story of Washington, the private athletic club, the small man from the 3rd row. The student asks, who was he? Victor says, his name was Bruce Lee. The student has heard the name by then. 1978. Enter. The dragon has come out. The world knows the name. The student says, Bruce Lee. The actor. Victor looks at him. Not the actor, he says. He pauses. The actor was just what some people saw. Washington, D.C. March 1972. The Soviet champion came to show America what the Soviet system produces, and found a question he is still answering. 94 fights, and one evening on a mat in Georgetown. That was the education. That was Bruce Lee.